So guys, welcome back to a brand new EKo CBG video, this time a deck profile of Royal Paladin. Now, as you guys are very well aware, Royal Paladins are generally split between Majesty Lord Blaster and Messianic in the standard format. But what if I could tell you could have the best of both worlds? Now, in terms of our starter, we are looking at Barkle. He is the standard starter that comes with the Majesty Lord Blaster special set, although the only thing you could make a difference to is potentially including Glime. Now, the only reason we are running Barkle is because this deck strength is very much so convincing your opponent that you're not actually playing Messianic, and that you are just going to try and kill them with a standard MLB. Now, in terms of our trigger, we are looking at running 4 of Future Knight Lu, 4 of Flogel. Of course, if you do own any packs of Psyqualia Strife, feel free to include the foils to bling out these cards. 4 of Yggdrasil Maiden Elaine, and of course you can do without Flash Shield Assault as our draw PG. Now, the important thing to keep with this deck is that since we can, as you'll find later, effectively OTK our opponent with no chance of healing on the off chance that they don't have a PG or enough shield in their hand, your name of the game is damage denial. You want to give them absolutely no counterblast up until the very end of the game, at which point you effectively want to see them go 0 to 12. As for that, we're going to come back to that in just a moment, and it is about as interesting as it sounds. Now, in terms of grade 1s, for any of you who have played the Messianic variant back when that was a thing during Extra Booster 06, I believe, so Light of Salvation, Logic of Destruction, you'll be familiar with our 4 of Blaster Javelin, whose skill reads Continuous on Rearguard. During the battle it is boosted. If you have a Vanguard with Blaster or Arcsaver in its card name, it gets plus 2k. And then Auto on Rearguard. When it boosted, if you have 6 units with Blaster and their different card names, choose one of your opponent's front row rearguards and bind it. So the nice thing to keep in mind is since all these cards are based around the Vieira rendition of the Miyagi Cardfight Club, of course the image writer of this is of Naoki, who's of course a Narukami main. So the thing you'll find with these cards as well that's quite cool is how each one of them somewhat personifies the clan that the character who represents it mains. So in this case, since of course it's Narukami, it is a bind-centric card for us in Royal Paladin. Then we have Blaster Dagger, who reads Continuous on Rearguard. If you have 6 units with Blaster with their different card names, they get boost. So this effectively has the ability to give your entire back row boost, effectively for free. And then Auto on Rearguard, when the attack of your Vanguard with Blaster or Arcsaver in its card name hits a Vanguard, you may return this unit to your hand. So it also has the bounce effect, which is of course fantastic. And finally, like you saw coming to us from the Majesty Lord Blaster special set, we've got our playset of Wingull Brave, whose skill reads, when its attack or the attack it boosted hits a Vanguard, look at 7 cards from the top of your deck, reveal up to 1 card with Blaster in its card name from among them, and put it into your hand, and then shuffle your deck. The absolutely fantastic thing about this card is, with the exception of itself, and just one of our grade 2s as well as, spoiler alert, one of copy of the Order, it effectively is able to search every single other card in the deck. This just increases our chances to, frankly, ridiculous levels, making it immensely consistent for us to be able to hit that 6 crit threshold, or potentially higher, as we're going to come back to later. Now, moving on to our grade 2s, we have got 1 copy of When Light and Darkness Intersects. This is the order that you get, I believe, a playset of when you buy the special set Majesty Lord Blaster, and effectively just does, when you have Blaster Blade, search out Blaster Dark, when you have Blaster Dark, search Blaster Blade, and when you have both, search out Majesty Lord Blaster. So it gives you immense search ability. We only run one of them, partially for its utility, and also for the ability to be able to somewhat fool our opponent into not seeing the Messianic turn coming, because this deck's core appeal is the element of surprise. Furthermore, we're running 2 copies of Blaster Arrow. Now, its skill reads, when you have 6 units with Blaster in their different card names, they cannot be chosen by your opponent's effect, so effectively it gives your entire board resist, which is absolutely fantastic, especially with the Chaos matchup coming up soon. It means they aren't able to be locked, because no effects can be inflicted upon them. Its secondary skill is a 1 in attacks. If you have 3 or more units with Blaster in the different card names, you can discard a card and search out a Arcsaver Dragon. But in our deck, we aren't running an Arcsaver, as despite my testing, I didn't find it really did much for the deck, even if I do understand the appeal of the card. It just feels like it clogged up space, it wasn't a Blaster, and it was just a chance for our other skills to whiff, which I wasn't a big fan of. Furthermore, Of course, at the moment we're kind of running it mostly for its different blaster name. Furthermore, we're running 3 Blaster Reappears. Now this is an absolutely imperative card, since it reads, if you have 6 or more blasters with different card names, this unit gets plus 15k, but that's not it. What we're running it for is the secondary skill, Auto and Rearguard Circle. When it attacks a Vanguard, if you have a Vanguard with Blaster or Arcsaber in its card name, check the top card of your deck, and you put it either at the top or the bottom. So this, of course, is meant to be Misaki, and it's our OTT counterpoint. And our OTT effectively allows us to look at the next card, and we're going to get to Messianic, and you'll see why this skill is so powerful, but it's able for us to both engage in mind games, as we're able to put cards either at the top or the bottom of our deck to confuse them, so you can try and bait a PG out by leaving it at the top, or potentially be able to find out if our Messianic turn is actually going to work, and be able to play around that a little bit more. So it's absolutely fantastic in that regard. And then, furthermore, we have 3 Blaster Blades, for obvious reasons. Obviously you run it since if you have 4 or more units on Rearguard, when it's on Vanguard, it gets crit +1. In one place, counter +1, soul +1, retire one of your opponent's front row Rearguards. Of course, we also run it for the Majesty Lord Blaster. Likewise, with Blaster Dark, who criminally has to be run from the special set, because this continuous skill that it also a Royal Paladin. So unfortunately it was in errata, meaning you can't ride your Image Ride Blaster Darks, which is a bit of a shame, but we have to do with it. We have to work with what we've got, really. And when placed, Counterblast 1, and your opponent chooses one of his or her Rearguards and retires it. So this can also target back row, but unfortunately your opponent gets to choose. And on Vanguard once per turn, if they have no Rearguards, you discard one and it gets +1 drive. And finally, this is a special spice given us as a rare during the next stage, is our Rearguard Rising Knight Belter. Its skill reads Auto and Rearguard Circle. At the end of a battle that attacked a Vanguard, Soul Blast 1 and return any number of cards with Blaster in their card names from your Rearguard and Drop Zone to your deck, and shuffle it. And if you return 3 or more, put this into Soul and draw 2 cards. So realistically, this is the second card in our deck who isn't a Blaster, alongside the Triggers, of course, and the Order, and Wingle, of course. But effectively, you don't really want to run any more than 3 of any Blaster, since if you notice the card names require different card names, so you want to maximize the chance of seeing them, or minimizing the chance of having multiples of the same one on the board at the same time. Since we're not an Excel clan, that can completely destroy our combo. But effectively, that way you're maximizing the chances of seeing different Blasters, as well as you want to keep these 2 there for our Majesty buff. And then, finally, for the true spice of the deck, we have 3 of our finisher, Messianic Lord Blaster, whose skill reads, during your turn, if you have 6 units with Blaster in their different card names, this gets the original power and critical of all of your Rearguards. Now, this skill alone is effectively acting as our finisher. As you'll see in a moment, we can get that crit up to, quite frankly, ridiculously high numbers. As its second skill, which is Auto and Vanguard, when you drive check a card with Blaster in its card name, you may call that card to an open Rearguard circle. So that way you're effectively able to leave 1 or 2 slots open on your board during your turn, and when you drive check you can call them. And of course, if you have something like Blaster Dagger, they perhaps all get boosts, so all of a sudden you can attack. And the key thing there in the continuous skill is original, meaning if I direct a critical trigger and give that to my Rearguard, the power and critical doesn't actually transfer onto my Vanguard. Same thing with Force Markers, as Force Markers merely give a unit 10k. However, the thing with Force 2 Markers is they don't read your Vanguard gets, or your unit gets +1 crit. They read this unit's original critical becomes 2, which leads us on very nicely to our second grade 3, which is Majesty Lord Blaster. Now you guys may very well be familiar with this card, as it has a continuous on Vanguard or Rearguard. If Blaster Blade and Blaster Dark are in your soul, this unit gets critical +1, and if it's on Vanguard, it also gets +5k and +1 drive. Now, you'll notice this doesn't say during your turn, meaning this card is actually 18k on your opponent's turn if you have both in soul. And its second skill is really what gives the deck its spice, since it says when it attacks, you can put 2 Rearguards into your soul and get 2 Imaginary Gift Force. Now, its first skill triggers if Blaster Blade and Blaster Dark are in soul, but unlike your Zero variant or your original Majesty Lord Blaster, 2 Rearguards going into the soul don't have to be Blaster Blade or Blaster Dark. They can be any Rearguard at all. So you could very easily ride it, get your Force 2 marker, put it on the Vanguard, on attack, suck up 2 Rearguards. If you happen to get Blaster Blade and Blaster Dark, that's fantastic. If you don't, there's no matter. You drop 2 more Force 2 markers, and if you potentially don't see Messianic for another turn, you can pull the same shenanigans again, try and get 2 more because in effect, with this deck, if you are somehow able to populate all 6 slots with Force 2 markers, despite the fact the rear 3 don't actually do anything, as that doesn't transfer to the boost, what it does mean is when your Messianic swings, if you're able to get a full board, and as many Force 2 markers as possible, of course, even if you run Messianic first, you're automatically sitting on 7 crit, because you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Because, of course, since it collects all the together, you usually end up with about a 60 to 70 to potentially even 80k card. And then that card is also gathering all their critical. And of course, if you turn one of your units to 2 crit, so of course your first Force 2 is you want it to go on one of your rear guards, so that you effectively double up its effectiveness. Since both this unit will have 2 crit, or this of course, while your Vanguard keeps its own and also takes everybody else's. So it's a way to effectively get 2 Force markers for the price of 1. And if you have one on the entire front, you're hitting them with 9 crit. Now, the sweet spot there is to try and bait those out early. If you want to try and bait out their PGs very early, you want to keep their hand low, which is why you want to be damage denying them. Because if you're able to pump out enough not criticals, but enough Force markers, of course, you can guard very early with your grade 1s and your grade 2s, solely because of Belter's existence. Since it uses rear guard or drop zone, you can effectively take everything you use to guard, shuffle it back into the deck, increasing the chance of your Messianic actually hitting, which is huge. It's actually humongous. And what that effectively enables you to do is, if your opponent doesn't have a PG, on the turn it swings, you try and leave a slot open, you swing with Bishop first, you check your top card, and then you proceed to, if it's not the card you want, you put it at the bottom, and you try and effectively thin out your deck to the point where every card is either going to be a trigger, but even more so than triggers, you care about blasters. So you actually want to see your triggers early. You want to play as defensive as possible, you want to swing at its rear guards, get as many cards in hand as possible, but you don't want to give them any damage. Because once you hit that 10 crit threshold, or rather once you hit the 11, the 10k is sort of difficult, but by that point they probably would have dropped a heal somewhere or checked it. Effectively, you want to start with 10k, and for every heal they check, you can go down by 1, and that is how many criticals you are going to need in order to, quite literally, kill them. They only have 4 triggers, meaning they can only 6 damage heal 4 times. So, realistically, they only need 9 checks, or 9 cards. 9 damage is potentially the max they can take, because they're going to go to 5, then they can 6, 7, 8, 9, and the 10th is going to kill them. So if you have 10 crit, you can reduce that by 1 for every heal trigger they reveal, because at that point you're effectively putting them in the position of how much damage do I need so that my opponent literally cannot heal out of it. And that's effectively the point of the deck. You're trying to 0 to death them without giving them much in the way of defensive options or active play, because a lot of decks nowadays rely on Counterblast, and this deck plays the damage denial game fantastically. Now, an interesting tech choice might just be running a one of Exculpate the Blaster as an alternate finisher. Now, the reason for that is because some decks are really able to build board very quickly, and since you are able to add a Blaster Blade from your hand, which again you can search out with our order, you might be able to play this, wipe their entire board. Of course, you Soul Blast everything, but keep in mind, with our Belter, you are able to shuffle everything back into the deck, which will stack your deck heavily in the favor of blasters, which means next turn you can rewrite the Messianic and be able to go from there. Alternatively, as we mentioned, you could run the Arcsaver Dragon, and if you do, of course, that means you are able to call this as a rear guard, which in itself acts as an extra blaster. So this isn't necessarily something I would recommend, but it is food for thought in case you have a spare copy and are trying to maybe spice the list up a little bit to try and surprise your opponent out of nowhere. Alright guys, so thank you very much for watching. If you would like to catch us live, feel free to do so at twitch.tv/EKO_CBG. And if you would like to support us, make sure to check out our sponsor, Golden Phoenix Game, where you can use code EKO at checkout. So guys, again, thank you very much for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you would like to see in the future. And so guys, take care, stay safe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye guys.